The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars and planets. Among these worlds, humanity had carved out a small place for itself. For years, Earth's people had reached for the stars, dreaming of exploring new frontiers and meeting alien races. But the reality was far from what they imagined. Instead of being welcomed as equals, humans were often treated like newcomers, naive and unimportant. On Epsilon 7, a large space station orbiting a distant star, tension simmered every day. The station was a hub of activity, bustling with traders, diplomats and workers from dozens of species. Humans made up a significant portion of the population here, but they weren't always treated fairly. Many aliens saw them as inferior, a young race still learning how to survive in the harshness of space. Daniel Carter stood at the edge of one of the station's observation decks, staring out into the endless blackness dotted with twinkling lights. He was a diplomat, sent by Earth to help maintain peace between humans and other species on Epsilon 7. His job wasn't easy. Every day he faced complaints, insults, and outright hostility from both sides. Today, however, felt different. Something heavy hung in the air like the calm before a storm. Behind him, footsteps echoed softly against the metal floor. Turning, Daniel saw Lyra, a Valith negotiator. The Valith were tall, slender beings with shimmering silver skin and sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through anyone they looked at. Lyra was no exception. Her tone was cold when she spoke. "Your kind is causing trouble again," she said without greeting. "Another shipment delayed, another excuse from your leaders." Daniel sighed. This was becoming a common refrain. Shipments from Earth often arrived late or not at all, and the Valith blamed humans for the delays. It didn't matter that human settlers living near supply routes had reported strange disappearances too. To the Valith, it was always humanity's fault. "We're investigating," Daniel replied calmly, though his patience was wearing thin. "These things take time." Lyra tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "Time is something we do not have much of. Perhaps if your species were more efficient." Her words trailed off, but the implication was clear. Humans were weak, inefficient, unworthy. Daniel clenched his jaw but forced himself to stay composed. Losing his temper wouldn't solve anything. Elsewhere in the station, Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly in the maintenance bay. She was a young engineer, barely into her 30s, with grease-streaked hands and a determined look in her brown eyes. Rachel loved fixing things. It gave her a sense of purpose. But lately, her work felt meaningless. Everywhere she turned, she encountered reminders of how little respect humans received. That morning, an alien trader had refused to let her inspect a damaged piece of equipment he'd brought in for repair. "You lack the skill," he'd sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Rachel had wanted to argue to prove him wrong, but she knew it wouldn't change anything. The trader would simply go to another mechanic, one who wasn't human. She tightened bolts on a broken fuel line. Rachel thought about the stories she'd heard from other workers. Stories of unfair wages, stolen resources, and outright discrimination. Some humans accepted it as part of life in space. Others, like Rachel, grew angrier each day. Later that afternoon, Daniel attended yet another meeting. Representatives from various species gathered around a circular table, their faces grim. A recent incident involving a missing cargo ship had escalated tensions even further. The Valith accused humans of sabotage, while human settlers claimed the vessel had been intercepted by pirates allied with alien factions. Daniel tried to mediate, speaking slowly and carefully. "We need evidence before making accusations," he said. "Jumping to conclusions will only make matters worse." But his words fell on deaf ears. Voices rose, arguments erupted, and soon the room descended into chaos. Frustrated, Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. How could he keep the peace when everyone refused to listen? After the meeting ended, Daniel walked back to his quarters deep in thought. He passed groups of humans and aliens alike, noticing the tension in their body language. Conversations stopped abruptly as he approached, only to resume in hushed tones once he moved on. It was clear that trust was breaking down. not just between species, but within humanity itself. Rachel noticed the same thing later that evening. She joined a group of fellow engineers in the station's mess hall, where talk quickly turned to the growing unrest. One man named Kevin slammed his fist on the table. "Why should we put up with this?" he demanded. "They treat us like dirt." Others nodded in agreement, their anger palpable. Rachel listened quietly, unsure whether to speak up. She understood their frustration, but she also knew that rash actions could lead to disaster. Still, the idea of fighting back appealed to her more than ever. Back in his quarters, Daniel sat alone, staring at a photo of his family back on Earth. His wife smiled warmly in the picture, holding their young son. They had encouraged him to take this assignment, believing he could make a difference. Now, Daniel wondered if they were wrong. He thought about Rachel, whom he'd met briefly during one of his inspections of the maintenance bay. There was fire in her eyes, a determination that reminded him of his younger self. Maybe there was hope after all. Or maybe humanity was already past the point of no return. Across the station, whispers spread like wildfire. Rumors of rebellion grew louder, fueled by anger and resentment. Humans began organizing secret gatherings, discussing ways to push back against the oppressive systems around them. Some suggested peaceful protests, others advocated for violence. No one agreed on the best course of action. But one thing was certain: humanity's patience was running out. As night fell over Epsilon 7, the station remained eerily quiet. Most inhabitants retreated to their quarters, exhausted from another tense day. But beneath the surface, emotions boiled over. The fragile peace Daniel had worked so hard to maintain was unraveling faster than anyone anticipated. And somewhere, in the darkness, someone whispered a single sentence that would echo throughout history. No species will ever forget the moment humanity's patience snapped. Though spoken softly, the words carried weight. They hinted at a future none could predict, a future where humanity might rise above its struggles or fall victim to its own rage. For now, the galaxy watched and waited, unsure what tomorrow would bring. For Daniel, sleep eluded him that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the day in his mind. Each argument, each insult, each act of defiance weighed heavily on his conscience. Was there truly no way to bridge the gap between humans and aliens? Or had the chasm grown too wide? Rachel, too, found herself unable to rest. She paced her small quarters, her thoughts racing. Images of the arrogant traitor flashed in her mind, followed by memories of the heated discussions in the mess hall. A part of her wanted to believe in diplomacy, in finding common ground. But another part, the part that burned with indignation, knew better. Change wouldn't come from waiting patiently. It would come from action. Outside, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to the turmoil below. Yet among those distant lights, decisions were being made that would shape the fate of countless lives. Humanity teetered on the brink of something monumental, though no one could say exactly what it was. All they knew was that the days ahead would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Epsilon 7 drifted silently through the void, a microcosm of the galaxy's larger struggles. Here, amidst the clashing ideologies and simmering animosities, humanity prepared to take its next step. Whether it led to triumph or tragedy remained to be seen. But one truth lingered in the hearts of all who called the station home. The era of patience was ending. Back on Earth, the mood was tense. News of the troubles at Epsilon 7 and other human outposts in space spread quickly. People gathered around screens in their homes, watching reports from distant colonies. Journalists described how humans were treated poorly by alien species, especially by the Valith and others who saw themselves as superior. The stories painted a grim picture: humans working long hours for little pay, living in poor conditions, and being bullied or ignored when they tried to speak up. One video, however, changed everything. It showed a group of human miners trapped on a remote asteroid, forced to work under harsh conditions by the insectoid Zarnok hive. The footage revealed broken equipment, unsafe tunnels, and exhausted workers barely able to stand. When one miner collapsed, the Zarnok overseers simply dragged him away, leaving his fate unknown. The video ended with the desperate faces of the remaining workers pleading for help. The video went viral almost instantly. Social media platforms lit up with outrage. Hashtags like GAR, human rights in space, and enough is enough trended worldwide. Protests erupted outside embassies of alien nations on Earth, with crowds chanting slogans like, "We are not slaves," and "Respect humanity." Governments scrambled to respond, but it was clear that public sentiment had shifted. People weren't just angry, they were furious. Olivia Hayes sat in her small apartment in New York City, watching the video over and over again. She was a journalist known for her bold investigations into corruption and injustice. Her articles often exposed uncomfortable truths, making her both admired and feared. This time, though, she felt something different, a deep sense of responsibility. Humanity needed someone to tell their story, to make sure the galaxy heard their voice. Determined, Olivia began digging deeper. She reached out to contacts across the solar system, interviewing miners, traders, and settlers who had experienced discrimination firsthand. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Many alien factions, particularly the Valith and the Zarnok, had been deliberately undermining human progress for decades. They restricted access to valuable resources, imposed unfair trade agreements, and even sabotaged human projects to maintain their dominance. After weeks of research, Olivia published her findings in an explosive article titled "Chains Among the Stars." The piece detailed how humanity had been systematically oppressed since venturing into space. It included testimonies from victims, leaked documents, and damning evidence of collusion between powerful alien species. The article concluded with a rallying cry. Humanity must rise. We cannot allow ourselves to be treated as second-class citizens any longer. The response was overwhelming. Millions read the article within hours of its release. Politicians cited it in speeches, activists used it to fuel protests, and ordinary people shared it with friends and family. For the first time in years, humanity felt united, not just as individuals, but as a species. On Epsilon 7, news of Olivia's exposé reached Rachel Monroe and the other human workers. Rachel read the article late at night, huddled in her quarters, with her tablet glowing softly in the darkness. Each word resonated deeply with her. She thought about the trader who had dismissed her skills earlier that week, the endless hours spent fixing machines while aliens looked down on her. Most of all, she thought about the anger simmering inside her, and inside so many others. The next day, Rachel joined a secret meeting organized by Kevin, the man who had spoken passionately in the mess hall. About 20 people gathered in an abandoned storage room, their faces illuminated by dim overhead lights. Some were engineers like Rachel, others were dock workers, pilots, or settlers passing through the station. They whispered excitedly as they waited for the meeting to begin. Kevin stood at the center of the group holding a datapad. "We've all seen what's happening," he said, his voice low but intense. "We're tired of being pushed around, tired of being treated like we don't matter. It's time to do something about it." Rachel nodded along, feeling a surge of determination. Someone suggested organizing strikes, refusing to unload alien cargo ships or repair their equipment. Another person proposed sabotaging key systems to disrupt operations on the station. Ideas flew back and forth, each more daring than the last, but not everyone agreed. A woman named Sarah raised her hand hesitantly. "I get why we're upset," she said, "but if we start causing trouble, they'll crack down on us even harder. What happens then?" Her question hung in the air, sobering the group. Rachel understood the risks, but she also knew that doing nothing wasn't an option. "If we don't fight back," she said firmly, "nothing will ever change. We can't keep waiting for someone else to fix this for us." Her words sparked murmurs of agreement. Slowly, the group began hashing out a plan. They decided to start small, with protests and acts of non-compliance, but left the door open for more drastic measures if necessary. Before leaving, they vowed to recruit others and spread the message to human settlements across the galaxy. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter struggled to keep the peace. Rumors of rebellion reached him almost daily, and tensions continued to rise. During another heated meeting, Lyra accused humans of plotting insurrection. "Your kind is incapable of cooperation," she snapped. "You seek only chaos." Daniel bristled but kept his tone measured. "Not all humans feel that way," he replied. "Most of us want peace just like you." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Peace requires trust, and trust is earned, not given freely." Her words stung, but Daniel couldn't deny their truth. Trust between humans and aliens had eroded to the point of collapse. Even his efforts to mediate felt futile now. Still, he refused to give up. If anything, the growing unrest made his role even more important. As days turned into weeks, small acts of defiance began cropping up across Epsilon 7. Human crews refused to unload Valith cargo ships, citing safety concerns. Miners staged sit-ins demanding better working conditions. Protesters gathered outside alien embassies, holding signs that read, "Equal rights for all species," and "No more exploitation." The backlash was swift. Alien authorities cracked down hard, arresting protesters and threatening anyone involved in the movement. But instead of quelling the unrest, the crackdown only fueled it further. Stories of brutality spread quickly, galvanizing support for the cause. Rachel threw herself into the resistance, using her engineering skills to aid the effort. She modified tools to disable alien machinery temporarily, allowing workers to stage walkouts without risking permanent damage. She also helped create encrypted communication networks, enabling rebels to coordinate safely. Her contributions earned her respect among the group, though they came at a personal cost. Sleepless nights and constant worry took their toll, but Rachel didn't care. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was part of something bigger. Amid the chaos, Olivia Hayes continued her work, publishing follow-up articles that amplified the voices of those fighting back. Her writing inspired hope in some, and fear in others. Alien leaders condemned her as a provocateur, while human activists hailed her as a hero. Despite the pressure, Olivia remained steadfast, determined to shine a light on the injustices faced by her species. One evening, Daniel found himself standing once again at the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He thought about Rachel, Kevin, and the countless others risking everything to stand up for their rights. He thought about Olivia's articles and the impact they'd had on galactic politics. And he thought about the future, uncertain, volatile, and full of possibilities. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Turning, he saw Rachel approaching. She looked tired but resolute, her hands shoved into the pockets of her jacket. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. Daniel nodded, gesturing for her to join him. They stood side by side, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Rachel broke the silence. "I know you're trying to keep things calm," she said. "But sometimes calm isn't enough. Sometimes you have to shake things up to make people listen," Daniel sighed. "I understand where you're coming from. Believe me, I do. But shaking things up can lead to consequences none of us are prepared for." Rachel turned to face him, her expression earnest. "Maybe. But staying quiet hasn't gotten us anywhere either. At least now people are paying attention." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Daniel wanted to argue, to convince her that diplomacy was the better path, but deep down, he knew she was right. Humanity's patience had snapped, and there was no turning back. As they parted ways, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that history was unfolding before his eyes. The galaxy would never forget this moment, the moment humanity decided it was done being pushed around. Whether it led to freedom or destruction remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the era of quiet endurance was over. Across Epsilon 7, whispers of rebellion grew louder. Acts of defiance became bolder. Humans, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, now stood united in their demand for respect. Alien leaders watched nervously, unsure how to respond. Some called for negotiations. Others urged retaliation. But everyone agreed on one thing: humanity had changed, and in the hearts of every human a spark burned brightly, a spark of hope, defiance, and determination. They had endured mistreatment for too long, and now they were ready to fight for their place among the stars, no matter the cost. The rebellion began with small actions, almost too quiet to notice at first. Human workers stationed on Epsilon 7 started refusing to follow orders from alien overseers. Dock workers slowed down their pace, letting cargo ships sit idle for hours. Miners sabotaged equipment just enough to halt production without causing permanent damage. These acts of defiance were subtle but effective, sending a clear message. Humanity was no longer willing to be pushed around. At the same time, protests erupted in human settlements across the galaxy. On a distant mining colony orbiting a red, dwarf star, settlers gathered in the main square holding banners that read, "No more silence and we deserve better." Similar demonstrations popped up on other colonies, each one growing bolder than the last. News of these events spread quickly, thanks to encrypted communication networks set up by rebels like Rachel Monroe. Her modifications to old alien tech allowed messages to bypass surveillance, ensuring that humans could organize without fear of retaliation, at least for now. Back on Earth, Olivia Hayes published another article, this time focusing on the growing resistance movement. She highlighted stories of ordinary people standing up to oppression, painting a vivid picture of humanity's resolve. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring even more individuals to join the cause. Politicians took notice too, with some openly supporting the protests, while others urged caution. The divide between those who wanted peace and those who demanded action grew wider every day. On Epsilon 7, tensions escalated rapidly. Alien authorities responded to the strikes and protests with harsh crackdowns. Valith enforcers patrolled the station's corridors, arresting anyone suspected of involvement in the rebellion. Some detainees were released after brief interrogations, shaken but unharmed. Others weren't so lucky. Rumors circulated about prisoners being sent to unknown locations, never to return. Fear gripped the station, but it only strengthened the resolve of those fighting back. Rachel found herself at the center of the resistance. Her engineering skills made her invaluable, as she devised new ways to disrupt alien operations without causing lasting harm. One evening, she worked late in the maintenance bay, modifying a piece of machinery to emit an electromagnetic pulse. When activated, the device would temporarily disable nearby alien systems, giving human workers a chance to escape or regroup. As she soldered wires together, Kevin approached her, his face pale with worry. "They're stepping up patrols," he said quietly. "I heard they're bringing in reinforcements from other stations." Rachel nodded, her hands steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. "We knew this would happen eventually," she replied. "It means we're getting to them." Kevin hesitated, glancing over his shoulder to make sure no one was listening. "Do you think we're ready for what comes next?" Rachel paused, lowering her tools. She didn't have an answer. The truth was, none of them truly knew what lay ahead. All they had was determination and hope. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter struggled to keep the fragile peace intact. He attended meeting after meeting, pleading with both sides to find common ground. But his words fell on deaf ears. The Valith accused him of sympathizing with the rebels, while many humans dismissed him as a traitor for trying to negotiate with their oppressors. Isolated and weary, Daniel questioned whether his efforts were making any difference at all. One morning, news arrived that changed everything. A squad of human Marines stationed near the edge of contested space had ambushed a Valith convoy carrying stolen resources from a human colony. Led by Captain Ethan Blake, the operation was swift and brutal. The Marines disabled the convoy's defenses, seized the stolen goods, and broadcast the entire event live across the galaxy. Footage of the attack showed Ethan standing tall amidst the chaos, his voice steady as he addressed the camera. "This is a message to every species that has ever underestimated us," he declared. "Humanity will not tolerate theft, exploitation, or mistreatment. If you come for us, we will fight back, and we will win." The video went viral within minutes, sparking outrage and admiration in equal measure. To many humans, Ethan became a symbol of defiance, a reminder that their species was capable of standing up to its enemies. To alien factions, however, the ambush was an act of war. The Valith immediately called for retribution, demanding that Earth hand over the perpetrators or face severe consequences. As the Galactic Council convened to discuss the incident, panic rippled through Epsilon 7. Alien traders packed up their goods and fled the station, fearing further violence. Human settlers braced themselves for the worst, unsure if the fragile alliances holding the galaxy together would survive the fallout. Daniel watched the unfolding crisis with a heavy heart. He tried to reason with Lyra, hoping to prevent an all-out conflict. "This doesn't have to end in war," he said during one tense negotiation session. "There's still time to talk things through." Lyra's expression remained cold. "Your kind has made its choice," she replied. "Now you must face the consequences." Her words chilled Daniel to the bone. For the first time, he realized how far things had spiraled out of control. The rebellion he'd once hoped to contain was now a wildfire consuming everything in its path. Rachel, too, felt the weight of what was happening. Late at night, she sat alone in her quarters, staring at the wall. Images of the ambush replayed in her mind: the fiery explosions, the defiant faces of the Marines, the cheers of supporters watching from afar. Part of her felt pride, knowing that humanity was finally fighting back. But another part worried about where this road might lead. What if the rebellion turned into something darker? What if humanity lost sight of its values in the pursuit of vengeance? Despite her doubts, Rachel threw herself into the resistance with renewed energy. She worked tirelessly to improve communication networks, ensuring that rebels could stay connected, even as alien forces tightened their grip on the station. She also collaborated with other engineers to develop new tools and strategies, determined to give humanity every advantage possible. Across the galaxy, the impact of the ambush continued to reverberate. Alien leaders debated how to respond, torn between calls for restraint and demands for retaliation. Some argued that crushing humanity would send a strong message to other emerging species. Others warned that such aggression could unite humanity, even further, creating a dangerous enemy. On Earth, governments scrambled to prepare for the worst. Military bases buzzed with activity as soldiers trained for potential conflicts in space. Factories ramped up production of weapons and spacecraft, preparing for a future where diplomacy might no longer be an option. Ordinary citizens followed, the news anxiously, unsure whether to feel hopeful or terrified. Olivia Hayes wrote another article, capturing the mood of uncertainty gripping the planet. She described the mix of fear and determination etched on people's faces, the quiet conversations about what might come next. Her piece ended with a question: will humanity rise to meet this challenge, or crumble under the pressure? The answer remained elusive, but one thing was certain: the galaxy was watching. Never before had a single species sparked such widespread upheaval. Humanity had shattered the illusion of unity among the stars, exposing deep fractures that threatened to tear the cosmos apart. As days passed, the atmosphere on Epsilon 7 grew increasingly volatile. Alien enforcers conducted random searches, detaining anyone who looked suspicious. Human settlers huddled together in secret meetings, planning their next moves. Rachel and Kevin led discussions about escalating their tactics, arguing that small acts of defiance were no longer enough. They needed something bigger, something that would force the galaxy to take them seriously. Their opportunity came sooner than expected. A massive shipment of rare minerals was scheduled to arrive at the station destined for a powerful Zarnok hive. The minerals were critical for constructing advanced weaponry, and losing them would deal a significant blow to the Zarnok's military capabilities. Rachel proposed intercepting the shipment, using her modified devices to disable the transport ship and redirect the cargo to a hidden location. The plan was risky, but the group agreed it was worth the gamble. Late one night, Rachel and a team of volunteers slipped into the docking bay, their movements silent and deliberate. They planted the devices on key systems, setting timers to activate just as the shipment arrived. Then they retreated to a safe distance, waiting nervously for the moment of truth. When the transport ship docked, chaos erupted. Alarms blared as the electromagnetic pulses knocked out power to the entire bay. In the confusion, rebels swarmed the vessel, seizing the crates of minerals and loading them onto a waiting freighter. By the time alien authorities regained control, the rebels had vanished, leaving behind only empty cargo holds and smoldering wreckage. News of the heist spread like wildfire, igniting celebrations among human settlements. For the first time, humanity had struck a tangible blow against its oppressors. The victory was small, but it proved that they were capable of more than anyone, including themselves, had imagined. Yet amid the triumph, questions lingered. How far would humanity go to secure its place among the stars? Would the rebellion inspire change, or unleash a cycle of violence that could never be undone? No one had the answers, but everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy would never forget the moment humanity's patience snapped. The success of the mineral heist sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time, humanity had proven it could hit back effectively against its oppressors. The stolen shipment was worth billions in galactic currency, and the Zarnok hive that owned it demanded immediate justice. Alien leaders gathered in emergency sessions, their voices rising in anger and frustration. Humanity's boldness had crossed a line, and retaliation seemed inevitable. On Earth, factories roared to life as governments poured resources into building fleets of warships. Engineers worked around the clock, designing new weapons and upgrading existing ones. Factories once used to produce consumer goods now churned out missiles, shields, and advanced propulsion systems. The planet transformed overnight into a massive military hub, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. Rachel Monroe watched the news from her quarters on Epsilon 7. Footage of assembly lines filled with workers assembling spacecraft played endlessly on screens across the station. She felt a strange mix of pride and unease. Humanity was finally taking action, but at what cost? Every ship built, every weapon forged, brought the galaxy closer to full-scale war. Back on Earth, Olivia Hayes wrote another article, this time focusing on the rapid militarization. She described how ordinary citizens had been drafted into service, leaving behind families and jobs to train for battle. Farmers became pilots, teachers became engineers, and students became soldiers. Her words captured both the hope and the sorrow of a species preparing for conflict. "We are arming ourselves not because we want to fight," she wrote, "but because we refuse to be victims any longer." Her article struck a chord with readers. Some praised her for highlighting the sacrifices being made, while others accused her of glorifying violence. Regardless, her work continued to shape public opinion, keeping the flame of resistance alive even as tensions escalated. On Epsilon 7, Daniel Carter struggled to maintain his role as a diplomat. The fragile peace he'd worked so hard to preserve was crumbling faster than ever. Alien authorities treated him with open hostility, accusing him of secretly supporting the rebellion. Human rebels, meanwhile, dismissed him as irrelevant, viewing his attempts at negotiation as weakness. Isolated and weary, Daniel questioned whether there was still a place for diplomacy in this new reality. One evening, he found himself sitting alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. His mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. Would humanity emerge victorious, or would it destroy itself in the process? He didn't have answers, only doubts. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Turning, he saw Rachel standing in the doorway. Her face was tired but resolute, her hands shoved into the pockets of her jacket. "Can I join you?" she asked. Daniel nodded, gesturing for her to sit. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the endless expanse of space stretch before them. Finally, Rachel spoke. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Her question caught him off guard. "I don't know," he admitted. "All I know is that we've reached a point where there's no turning back. Whether that's good or bad, only time will tell." Rachel sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Sometimes I wonder if we're becoming what we're fighting against. But then I remember how they treated us. How they still treat us, and I think maybe it's worth it." Daniel didn't respond. He couldn't argue with her logic, but he also couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread in his chest. The galaxy was teetering on the edge of chaos, and humanity's actions were pushing it closer to the brink. Meanwhile, Captain Ethan Blake became a symbol of humanity's defiance. His ambush on the Valith convoy had inspired countless others to take up arms. Militia groups formed on human colonies, training civilians to defend themselves against potential attacks. Ethan traveled between settlements, rallying support and sharing strategies. His speeches were fiery and passionate, urging people to stand together against their enemies. "We've spent too long bowing our heads," he declared during one rally. "Now it's time to raise them and show the galaxy that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." His words resonated deeply, especially among younger generations eager to prove themselves. Recruitment numbers soared as volunteers flocked to join the fight. Ships departed Earth daily, carrying troops and supplies to distant outposts. Humanity mobilized with terrifying efficiency, united by a shared sense of purpose. But not everyone agreed with the path humanity was taking. Some argued that violence would only lead to more suffering, while others worried about losing sight of their values in the pursuit of victory. Debates raged in forums and meeting halls with no clear consensus emerging. Even within the rebellion, divisions began to form over how far they should go to achieve their goals. Rachel found herself caught in the middle of these debates. During a secret meeting in the maintenance bay, Kevin proposed escalating their tactics further. "We need to hit them harder," he said, slamming his fist on the table. "Make them regret ever messing with us." Others nodded in agreement, but Sarah, the same woman who had raised concerns earlier, spoke up hesitantly. "If we keep pushing, they'll retaliate even harder. What happens when they decide to wipe us out completely?" Her question silenced the room. Everyone knew the risks, but acknowledging them aloud made the stakes feel even higher. Rachel broke the silence, her voice firm. "We can't stop now. If we do, everything we've fought for will be wasted. But we also need to be smart about it. We can't afford reckless mistakes." Her words struck a balance, earning nods of approval from both sides. For now, the group agreed to continue their current strategy, focusing on targeted strikes rather than all-out warfare. But the tension lingered, a reminder of the difficult choices ahead. As humanity prepared for war, alien factions scrambled to respond. The Valith called for unity among their allies, urging them to present a united front against the human threat. Other species, however, were less eager to commit. Some feared provoking further aggression, while others saw an opportunity to weaken the Valith's dominance. Divisions among the aliens mirrored those within humanity, creating a volatile mix of alliances and rivalries. Lyra, the Valith negotiator, grew increasingly frustrated with the lack of cooperation. She confronted Daniel during one heated meeting, her sharp eyes piercing through him. "Your kind has forced us into this position," she snapped. "Now you will reap the consequences." Daniel met her gaze steadily, though his heart pounded in his chest. "This isn't what anyone wants," he replied. "But you left us no choice." Lyra's expression hardened. "Choice is a luxury you no longer have." Her words chilled him, but he refused to back down. Even as the galaxy hurtled toward war, Daniel clung to the belief that peace was still possible, if only someone could find a way to bridge the gap. Across the galaxy, battles erupted in contested regions. Skirmishes flared up between human patrols and alien forces, each side testing the other's strength. Casualties mounted on both sides, fueling anger and resentment. Reports of destroyed ships and lost lives spread quickly, further polarizing opinions. Ethan led several successful missions, earning a reputation as a brilliant tactician. Under his command, human squads executed lightning-fast raids, striking key targets and retreating before reinforcements could arrive. These victories boosted morale, proving that humanity could hold its own against more experienced foes. But the cost of war weighed heavily on everyone involved. Soldiers returned home haunted by what they'd seen, their faces etched with exhaustion and grief. Civilians mourned loved ones lost in the fighting, wondering if the price of freedom was too high. Even those who supported the rebellion began to question whether the ends justified the means. Rachel wrestled with these questions in private. Late at night, she lay awake in her quarters, replaying memories of explosions and screams. She thought about the friends she'd lost, the sacrifices made in the name of resistance. Was it worth it? Could humanity truly build a better future from the ashes of destruction? Despite her doubts, Rachel pressed on. She dedicated herself to improving rebel technology, working tirelessly to give humanity every advantage possible. Her innovations earned praise from leaders like Kevin and Ethan, who relied on her expertise to plan their operations. Yet beneath her determination lurked a quiet fear that the rebellion might consume them all before it achieved its goals. As weeks turned into months, the galaxy braced for the inevitable climax. Humanity had proven it wouldn't back down, and alien factions were preparing for a decisive confrontation. Rumors swirled about a massive fleet gathering near Proxima Centauri, poised to launch a final assault on human strongholds. On Earth, governments issued statements calling for unity and resilience. Citizens rallied behind their leaders, determined to protect their homeworld at any cost. Factories produced weapons faster than ever, and recruitment drives brought in waves of new volunteers. The entire planet buzzed with activity, united by a single goal: survival. Olivia Hayes published her most powerful article yet, capturing the mood of a species on the brink of destiny. She described the courage and sacrifice of those fighting for humanity's future, as well as the fears and doubts lurking beneath the surface. Her piece ended with a poignant reflection. No matter what happens next, one truth will remain. Humanity has changed, and so has the galaxy. The galaxy was a powder keg, and the fuse had been lit. Humanity's defiance had grown into open rebellion, and alien factions were preparing to crush the uprising once and for all. The final battle loomed on the horizon, its shadow stretching across stars and planets. Everyone knew it was coming, humans, aliens, even those who tried to stay neutral, but no one could predict how it would end. On Epsilon 7, life had become a tense waiting game. Alien patrols roamed the station more aggressively than ever, their movements sharp and deliberate. Human settlers avoided eye contact, their faces pale with fear but also streaked with determination. Rachel Monroe spent most of her time in the maintenance bay, tweaking weapons and repairing damaged equipment brought in by rebel fighters. Her hands moved quickly, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. Daniel Carter, meanwhile, found himself increasingly isolated. His attempts at diplomacy had failed completely, and now both sides viewed him as an outsider. The Vaylith ignored his pleas for calm, while human rebels dismissed him as weak and ineffective. He wandered the station, alone, his steps heavy with the weight of failure. Still, he couldn't bring himself to give up entirely. Somewhere deep inside, he clung to the hope that peace might still be possible, even if it seemed like a distant dream. One evening, Daniel received an unexpected message from Lyra, the Vaylith negotiator. She requested a private meeting, something she hadn't done in weeks. Curious and desperate for any chance to ease tensions, Daniel agreed. They met in a quiet corner of the station, far from prying eyes. "You've seen the reports?" Lyra began, her voice unusually subdued. "Our fleets are gathering near Proxima Centauri. This will not end well for your kind." Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Then why meet with me? If you're so sure of victory, what's the point?" Lyra hesitated, her shimmering silver skin catching the dim light. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "Not all of us believe war is the answer. Some see value in humanity. But voices like mine are few, and they grow quieter each day." Her words surprised Daniel. He had always seen Lyra as cold and calculating, but now he glimpsed something else beneath her sharp exterior. A flicker of doubt, perhaps even regret. "What do you want from me?" he asked cautiously. "I want you to understand," she replied. "When this ends, there may be no going back. If humanity survives, it will do so as a changed species. and so will we." With that, she turned and left, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts. Her warning lingered in his mind, a chilling reminder of the stakes involved. War wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about survival, and the cost of that survival. Back on Earth, preparations reached a fever pitch. Troops drilled endlessly, practicing maneuvers and strategies for the battles to come. Factories churned out ships and weapons at an astonishing rate, their output fueled by the collective will of a planet determined to fight for its future. Olivia Hayes visited military bases and shipyards, documenting the effort in her articles. She spoke to soldiers, engineers, and civilians, capturing their hopes and fears in vivid detail. One soldier named Alex stood out to her during an interview. A young man barely out of his teens, he had volunteered despite having no combat experience. When Olivia asked why he joined, he shrugged. "Someone has to stand up," he said simply. "If we don't, who will?" His words stayed with Olivia long after the interview ended. She wrote them into her next article, framing them as a reflection of humanity's spirit. Her piece resonated deeply, inspiring readers to support the war effort, even as anxiety gripped their hearts. In space, Captain Ethan Blake led humanity's forces with unwavering resolve. His fleet patrolled contested regions, engaging in skirmishes with alien patrols and striking key targets whenever possible. Each victory boosted morale, proving that humanity could hold its own against more experienced foes. Yet Ethan knew the real test was yet to come. The alien coalition was massing its strength, and when it struck, it would do so with overwhelming force. Rachel played a crucial role in the resistance, using her engineering skills to innovate new technologies. One breakthrough came when she discovered blueprints hidden in alien archives, designs for a powerful superweapon capable of crippling entire fleets. The weapon operated by emitting a concentrated energy pulse that disrupted propulsion systems and shields, rendering ships helpless. It was devastatingly effective, but also morally questionable. Rachel wrestled with the implications of using such a weapon. Could humanity justify unleashing destruction on such a scale? Or would doing so make them no better than the oppressors they fought against? She shared her findings with Kevin and other rebel leaders, sparking heated debates. "We can't afford to hesitate," Kevin argued. "This is our chance to turn the tide. If we don't use it, we might lose everything." Others, like Sarah, voiced concerns. "What happens if we win? Will we still recognize ourselves afterward? Using this thing feels wrong." Rachel listened to both sides, torn between pragmatism and principle. In the end, she decided to present the weapon as an option, but only as a last resort. "If we have to use it," she said firmly, "we'll do so knowing exactly what it means, and we'll live with the consequences." As the alien fleet approached Proxima Centauri, humanity braced for the inevitable clash. Rebel forces converged on the system, their ships forming a defensive line around key positions. Engineers worked tirelessly to fortify outposts and repair damaged vessels. Soldiers checked their gear one last time, steeling themselves for the fight of their lives. Ethan addressed his crew aboard the flagship, his voice steady and strong. "This is it," he said. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human who's ever been told they're less than equal. Show them what we're made of." His words ignited a fire in the hearts of his crew. Across the fleet, similar speeches rallied troops, filling them with courage and resolve. Even those who doubted the path humanity had taken found themselves swept up in the momentum. The galaxy watched and waited, holding its breath. The battle began with a deafening roar. Alien ships surged forward, their weapons blazing. Human defenders responded with equal ferocity, launching counterattacks and weaving through enemy formations. Explosions lit up the void, turning the darkness into a chaotic tapestry of light and destruction. Ships collided, debris scattered, and lives were lost in an instant. Rachel monitored the chaos from a command center on Epsilon 7, coordinating rebel efforts and relaying critical information to Ethan's fleet. Her heart pounded as she watched the battle unfold, her fingers flying over controls. Every decision mattered. Every second counted. Despite their bravery, humanity's forces struggled under the sheer numbers of the alien coalition. Waves of enemy ships overwhelmed defenses, pushing closer to the heart of the human line. Desperation set in as commanders called for reinforcements that weren't coming. It was then that Rachel made the call. Activating the superweapon, she targeted the largest cluster of enemy ships. A brilliant flash erupted as the energy pulse surged outward, disabling dozens of vessels in an instant. The alien advance faltered, giving humanity a brief reprieve. Cheers erupted among rebel forces, but Rachel felt no joy. The weapon had worked, but at what cost? She stared at the screen, watching the disabled ships drift helplessly in space. Guilt gnawed at her, mingling with relief and exhaustion. As the battle raged on, humanity clawed its way back from the brink. With renewed strength, rebel fighters pushed forward, driving the alien fleet into retreat. Victory was within reach, but it came at a terrible price. Countless lives had been lost, and the scars of war would linger for generations. When the dust settled, humanity emerged victorious, but forever changed. No longer dismissed or underestimated, they commanded respect and fear. The galaxy looked upon Earth with wary eyes, unsure whether to admire or dread the species that had risen from oppression to dominance. And as the survivors picked up the pieces, one truth remained undeniable. No species would ever forget the moment humanity's patience snapped. The battle near Proxima Centauri ended with a deafening silence. The once bright explosions faded into the cold darkness of space, leaving behind drifting wreckage and broken ships. Humanity had won, but victory felt hollow. The cost was staggering. Thousands of lives were lost, human and alien alike. Entire fleets lay destroyed, their remains floating silently as a grim reminder of what had been sacrificed. On Epsilon 7, Rachel Monroe sat in the command center, staring at the screens that displayed the aftermath. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through reports of casualties and damage. The superweapon had turned the tide, but its use weighed heavily on her conscience. She thought about the disabled alien ships, their crews trapped inside, helpless and frightened. Was this truly justice, or had humanity become the very thing it fought against? Daniel Carter wandered the station alone, his steps slow and heavy. He passed groups of survivors, some celebrating quietly, others sitting in stunned silence. The air smelled faintly of smoke and burned metal, a lingering reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. Daniel's mind replayed Lyra's words, "When this ends, there may be no going back." He realized now how right she had been. Humanity had changed, and so had the galaxy. Back on Earth, Olivia Hayes wrote her final article, capturing the bittersweet mood of a species grappling with its newfound power. She described the celebrations in cities and towns where people cheered and embraced one another, relieved that the war was over. But she also highlighted the grief etched on faces at memorials for fallen soldiers and civilians. Her piece ended with a question. What kind of future will we build from the ashes of this conflict? Her words resonated deeply, sparking debates across the planet. Some argued that humanity's victory proved they deserved respect and equality among the stars. Others worried about the moral compromises made along the way. The use of the superweapon became a particularly controversial topic, with many questioning whether such devastation could ever be justified. Captain Ethan Blake returned to Earth as a hero, his name spoken with reverence or fear by friend and foe alike. Crowds gathered to welcome him home, chanting his name and waving flags. But Ethan himself felt uneasy. He stood on a platform during a ceremony, accepting medals and accolades, but his mind kept returning to the battles he'd fought. The faces of those he'd lost haunted him, their voices echoing in his dreams. Victory had come at a price he wasn't sure he could live with. Rachel stayed on Epsilon 7, helping coordinate cleanup efforts and repair damaged systems. She worked tirelessly, throwing herself into tasks to avoid thinking too much about what had happened. Late at night, though, when the station grew quiet, She couldn't escape the weight of her choices. She often found herself staring out at the stars, wondering if humanity had truly achieved something meaningful, or simply proven itself capable of destruction. Kevin and Sarah remained divided over the rebellion's legacy. Kevin believed the ends justified the means, arguing that humanity's survival was worth any cost. "We did what we had to do," he said firmly during one heated discussion. "No one can take that away from us." Sarah shook her head, her expression troubled. "But at what cost? How many lines did we cross that we can't uncross? We wanted respect, not revenge." Their arguments reflected the larger divisions within humanity. Some celebrated the rebellion as a triumph of courage and determination. Others mourned the loss of innocence, fearing that humanity had sacrificed its values in pursuit of power. These debates raged in forums, meeting halls, and private conversations, shaping the way people viewed their place in the galaxy. Alien factions, meanwhile, struggled to respond to humanity's rise. The Valith and Zarnok hives retreated to regroup, licking their wounds and plotting their next moves. Neutral species watched cautiously, unsure whether to ally themselves with humanity or distance themselves entirely. For the first time, the galactic order felt uncertain, its foundations shaken by the emergence of a new force. Lyra, the Valith negotiator, disappeared shortly after the battle. Rumors circulated that she had been exiled for questioning the war effort, while others whispered that she had defected entirely. Daniel wondered what had become of her, hoping she had found peace somewhere in the vastness of space. As weeks turned into months, humanity began rebuilding. Factories shifted focus from weapons to rebuilding infrastructure, repairing colonies damaged during the war. Scientists worked on new technologies, aiming to improve life rather than destroy it. Governments issued statements calling for unity and cooperation, urging citizens to look toward the future rather than dwell on the past. Yet beneath the surface, tensions lingered. Survivors carried scars, both visible and invisible. Families mourned loved ones lost in the fighting, their pain raw and unhealed. Soldiers struggled to adjust to civilian life, haunted by memories of battles they couldn't forget. Even those who hadn't fought directly felt the impact, their lives forever altered by the war. Olivia continued writing, chronicling humanity's journey as it navigated the complexities of its new role in the galaxy. Her articles explored themes of forgiveness, redemption, and responsibility, challenging readers to think critically about the path forward. Though some criticized her for being too critical, others praised her for keeping humanity honest. Rachel eventually left Epsilon 7, seeking solace on a quiet colony far from the front lines. She took a job teaching young engineers, passing on her knowledge and experience. Teaching gave her a sense of purpose, a way to contribute without causing harm. Still, she often thought about the rebellion and the choices she'd made. Had she done the right thing? She didn't know, and perhaps never would. Ethan tried to move on, retreating to a small farm outside the city where he spent his days tending to crops and animals. The simplicity of rural life offered a stark contrast to the chaos of war, giving him time to reflect. He visited memorials occasionally, paying respects to those who hadn't made it home. Each visit reminded him of the fragility of life and the importance of using power wisely. Daniel, too, sought a quieter existence. He resigned from his diplomatic post, choosing instead to work with grassroots organizations focused on fostering understanding between species. Though the galaxy remained divided, he believed that small acts of kindness and cooperation could pave the way for lasting peace. Years passed, and humanity settled into its new reality. No longer dismissed or underestimated, they commanded respect and, sometimes, fear. Alien leaders approached Earth cautiously, wary of provoking another conflict. Trade agreements were renegotiated and alliances formed slowly, built on mutual benefit rather than dominance. But the memory of the rebellion lingered, a defining moment in humanity's history. It served as a reminder of what could be achieved through courage and determination, but also of the dangers of unchecked anger and ambition. The galaxy remembered the moment humanity's patience snapped, not just as a turning point for one species, but as a lesson for all. And so, life went on. Stars continued to shine. Planets orbited their suns and civilizations rose and fell. Humanity took its place among the stars, proud but humbled, victorious but scarred. They had proven themselves capable of greatness and of darkness. What they chose to do with that knowledge would shape the destiny of countless worlds. In the end, one truth remained undeniable. No species would ever forget the moment humanity's patience snapped. Whether that moment led to triumph or tragedy depended on the choices yet to come. But for now, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next.